Turning now to the US presidential race. Guaranteed entertainment. That's how the world's richest man, Elon Musk, teased his interview with the former President Donald Trump. The interview began on the now Musk-owned X platform, formerly known as Twitter, about 45 minutes later than scheduled due to technical issues. Joining us now for more on the latest in US politics is Joseph Williams. He's former senior editor at US News and World Report. Hi there, Joseph. Always good to see you.
Good to see you, Gerald.
So, Donald Trump made his full-blown return onto X Twitter with that interview with Elon Musk. What for you were some of the key takeaways from that 2-hour conversation? How did Trump do less than 12 weeks to go from Election Day?
Well, there weren't many really good takeaways. I mean, basically, Trump returned to a platform that essentially made him, and you basically had two ultra-wealthy guys talking to one another about politics. They were mutually deferential to one another. It was admittedly a very friendly interview, and Elon Musk has praised Trump repeatedly in the past. So if we were looking for fireworks, we were tuned into the wrong station, and basically they just spent the hour after they finally got underway talking about things that they felt were important, but nothing of real substance for the campaign. I suppose the key takeaway would be Donald Trump kind of kvetching about Kamala Harris. He was repeating a lot of his campaign talking points about the fact that he felt the Democrats pulled a fast one on him and that he wished Joe Biden were back in the race. But short of that, nothing on policy, nothing really to take home that you haven't already heard before.
You talk about these softballs. How much, though, do you think, X really needed this as well, just to, get followers back on that platform, so to speak?
I think it was mutually beneficial for both Trump and Elon Musk. I mean, admittedly, since taking over X in a couple of years ago, Musk has lost money hand over fist. Advertisers have bailed out on him. He needed something to make a big splash. He was hoping, I suppose, for the Donald Trump that showed up at NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists, a few weeks ago. That interview is still making headlines, but given the fact of who it was, who was talking to him, and what the platform was, it really didn't make very much of a dent in Twitter. I mean, I think it got a couple 100,000 viewers, but Donald Trump's triumphant return to the platform and Musk's gracious embrace of him really did nothing to stir anything that stir interest from people who weren't already interested already. And I think that's basically what they needed in order to have this thing either make headlines or bring followers back to Twitter to see the Trump show online.
Well, he did make certain headlines, didn't he? Because the United Auto Workers earlier filed federal labor charges against Trump and Musk, accusing them of trying to intimidate and threaten workers during that interview. So not exactly the splash he wanted, but where do you see that going? Any impact on the overall campaign, do you think?
Well, I think it's the wrong kind of headline, particularly if you're trying to woo people to the Republican Party who are in labor. Remember, he had the head of one of the labor unions speak very prominently at the Republican convention, and everyone saw that as a bid to attract the working men and women and maybe steal the labor issue away from the Democrats. But if you're making headlines with the labor unions about how they took action against you because you and your host wrongfully fired employees, that's not the kind of sales pitch that you want to make on the campaign trail to big labor. Now, it remains to be seen how far this goes. I mean, certainly the UAW, which has endorsed Kamala Harris, is trying to score some political points here. Whether or not it gets any traction beyond that, it remains to be seen. But certainly it wasn't the kind of attention that either of them wanted, particularly if they're trying to attract people back to the platform and to the Republican Party.
And you bring up the working men and women. I mean, Trump really honed in on the economy as well, right? Saying that's the issue people most care about. In many ways, he repeated his mantra that he would make America affordable again. Do you think, Joseph, that this is the defining issue of this election cycle? Are people just going to be voting with their wallets?
He's not wrong in that assessment. I think that a lot of people still are feeling the pinch. It's going to be a challenge for Vice President Harris, mainly because her name is in the White House or was on the ticket that is trying to manage this inflation. I think people will vote with their wallets, but I don't think it's a lock that that's the only deciding issue that they will take with them to the polls. Remember, Kamala Harris has edged ahead of Donald Trump in recent polls on who would manage the economy better. That's in part because of the honeymoon that she's on, That may fade, it may not, but we'll see. In other words, the Harris campaign is going to try to get people to remember that inflation shot up under Donald Trump and that it wasn't brought under control under President Biden. It's still out of hand and still a lot higher than anybody would wish it. But it is an issue that both of them are going to have to contend with one way or the other. And I think it will be a factor, but not necessarily the factor in the election.
So apart from the economy, what other issues do you think might sway voters? I mean, we've been covering a lot about, reproductive rights and immigration, of course. Might those tip the scale, do you think?
I think they actually will. I think abortion rights is going to be a very big issue. Several states have it codified in their constitution that that's going to be on the ballot in order to get people out to the polls. And once people who care about that particular issue are there, they hope that people will choose Harris as the next president. But both Harris and Trump have vulnerabilities. Hers is the economy, as you mentioned, immigration at the border. A lot of people are counting that as a top issue. Trump himself has his own record to try to defend, and the fact that he is now the one guarding against the age and vulnerability issue. So they both have strengths, they both have weaknesses. That is probably why a lot of aggregate polls are tied at this moment. But keep in mind, there is still roughly 2 months before the election. A lot can happen between now and then. The dynamics of the race almost certainly will change, but we'll have to wait and see in which direction it tacks and whether or not either campaign can take advantage of that change in direction.
Right. I mean, you talk about 2 months. In many ways, it's an eternity, and others, it's a blink of an eye, right? But the new Democratic ticket with Harris and Walz really has seemed to re-energize the party, reshaping this race. And there's always that question, though, of voter turnout and apathy, and on both sides of the aisle, right? Do you foresee the same this year? Do you think things might be different?
I think there's going to be a surge. I mean, certainly if Kamala Harris can keep up the excitement, then she has a very good chance of driving Democratic turnout. The election map still favors Trump. He's still ahead in a couple of key border states, and a lot of them don't have the kind of dynamic that would make up lost time for Harris. But certainly she has the edge in voter enthusiasm at this moment. Certainly the Republicans coming out of the convention seem to have it. But Barack Obama himself once said that Americans are very fascinated by the shiny new thing. And Kamala Harris is that shiny new thing, at least for the moment. But they're going to have to, at some point, drill down into policy and start talking about some really complex issues in a way that doesn't necessarily fit into a 20-minute stump speech or a 30-second commercial.
And we will be watching. Joseph Williams, our politics guru, thank you so much. We could talk about this all evening, but we'll have to leave it for there.
Always a pleasure.